Now then, improvisation. There was a time when I was a pupil at Mackey Academy in Stonehaven, a place where I distinguished myself not at all, because I was absolutely hell-bent on doing music, and it wasn't really done in those days to do music as a subject in school. But I remember I did sit what was then the old O grade, and I had to play a Bach two-part invention. And halfway through it, I forgot. Okay, so I know it was A minor, E7, and I got back into it. See, and I thought, what's it? Blown it, failed. And then the worst thing that could have happened to me happened. The examiner said, well, my boy, not many people can do that. I've given you an extra 2 marks. And I thought, I can make a living from this. From then on, I thought, right, okay, this has the stamp of approval. I can do this. And I've used that as an excuse ever since. But taking the subject of improvisation very seriously, and my studies, I've discovered that the little bit of brain that we musicians use, the jazz musicians use, it's exactly the same as the bit of brain used by Bach and Buxtehude. It's all the same thing. So my theory is that before we talk about jazz piano, you've really got to understand where it comes from. And I think that when Bach was a little lad, he heard about this guy called Buxtehude, who had a great gig playing at a social club somewhere around about Lubeck. This was 300 years ago, so it wasn't a Hammond organ. Buxtehude had all these little trademark things that Bach loved, so Bach went to hear him. So Bach goes into the church, and Buxtehude is doing this. Says, wait a minute, could you just show me that again? I really want to study this. And Buxtehude says, all right, okay, you play D minor in your left hand, and you play quarter notes in your right hand. And when I shout change to G minor, but keep the D down. Change! That's C sharp diminished. That's pretty easy. Okay, now do it with 8th notes straight. Change. Change. Now swing them. Now triplets. Semi-quavers. Now up a semitone. Buxtehude would have said to him, right, Sonny, you go away, practice that, come back next week, and we'll see how you're doing. And of course, Bach attended him regularly. So he'd go back the next week, and Buxtehude would say, okay, you can do that. Now you've got to do it in the major key. Oh, right, F, B flat, C7 over F, then D minor. He says, the following week, though, I'm going to teach you about counterpoint. Oh, he says, what's that? I says, well, it's very simple. Whatever your right hand does, your left hand does just a wee bit later. You got it? It's dead simple, but you've got to be able to take it through all the 12 keys. So let's start and give me a key. Any key?
A minor.
A minor, okay. In fact, I'll make it a bit more interesting. I'll modulate from A minor into what key?
F sharp.
F sharp minor, okay. If any here hasn't got perfect pitch, I'll cough when I get to F sharp minor. So I'll start in A minor, and then I'll end up in F sharp. Would you like 2, 3, or 4 parts in this? Oh, 3, okay. Okay, well, okay, now I need just some more information here. Digging the hole further for himself. Okay, if you could give me a note, any letter name, any note.
A.
A, okay, an A.
G.
G and a...
E flat.
E flat. Okay. Right, that gives me this. Okay. So let's just see what happens if I was to take these notes and do a little fugue on them in the A minor, and then I'll cough when I get into F sharp minor, and I'll cough when I get back into A minor. But Buxtehude said something to him that's very important. He says, Sonny, if you ever get stuck, hit a diminished chord and go 8. That's what we mean by a virtuosic cadenza. Go 8 son. So anytime you get lost, don't you forget that, son. Anytime you get stuck, you just hit that diminished chord. You'll spot the diminished chord. So here's the notes. Okay, so if I was to do a little fugue on that, starting in the right hand, then bringing that in the left hand, and then bringing it up a fifth in the left hand, it would sound something like this. Slow, medium, or fast? Fast, okay. Live show, you know. Here we go. Honestly, it's great fun to do improvisation. It gets you out of all sorts of scrapes, but it does lead you in certain cases to becoming unemployable. Because Bach loved to do what we all do, which is to improvise and confuse people. So the poor imagine a church like this 300 years ago, they come up, and Bach would always do a little fancy bit at the end of every 4 bars. So they would go, and if you want to see what it's like, come to Abbot's Hall Church on Sunday, where I'm still in employment, but I keep them guessing. Now, how does that work in terms of jazz piano? The big critical thing was that Bach listened. Listen. Now, you can get music out of a book, but I promise you it's no fun at all. It's joyless. The joy comes when you work with musicians who have a wee bit more than you do, and you learn from them. And that's what happened with Bach and Buxtehude. And then it passed on from Bach, add on, to the present day. Now, in America, over 100 years ago, you had all this influx from Europe of European music. You had Scottish music, which has got exactly the same groove as Handel. You know, a Handel groove is the same. It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same feel if you're playing, and all these different forms like quadrilles, waltzes, marches impacted upon the popular music of the day. So the first jazz writer of any importance really was Scott Joplin. And I'm going to take one tune, which I'm sure you know, it's called T for Two. And I'm going to work T for Two round other jazz musicians just to try and show you how it would have sounded. Now, Scott Joplin would have heard orchestras with trombones that would do this. Chirping flutes. You'd have heard tangos. and it came out in the compositions that he wrote. So if Scott Joplin were to have written Tea for Two, then this is how it could have sounded. Jazz musicians tend to find the rags a bit on the polite side. You know, I've heard so many children go. And it's called The Entertainer. Now, there was a movement came along, for want of a better expression, let's just call it the hooligan element. But these were the guys who invented something called boogie woogie. Now boogie woogie is great fun to play. It's not terribly difficult at its simplest level, which is, this is a simple boogie woogie. It imitates the sound of a train. From there, it went on to more elaborate patterns like this. Killers like Oscar Peterson would come along and destroy everybody by doing this. All these sort of patterns. Now, let's just pretend that these hooligans got a hold of Tea for Two. It might sound like this.